For generations, strong communities were built through wisdom, faith, and helping one another. We believe those things still matter. The Haven Project.
Our fall garden is not a whole lot different than our summer garden, except that temperatures are going down, not quick enough in my estimation, but going down in the fall, whereas they're coming up in the spring, and we'll see some of that. So there's going to be some statements in here regarding, it talks about a full cool weather garden. We don't have that, or at least I don't see it as having a cool weather garden. And I think once we get to the end of this, you'll see why I'm making that statement. There's a number of handouts there. I hope that you get one of each because there are plenty of them up there. And like I said before, feel free to ask questions whenever one comes up. We're going to look at understanding basics of fall gardening, selecting the best vegetables for fall planting, and I've got several handouts there for you that deal with companion planting, and that's important because of IPM, which is integrated pest management. So instead of having to use insecticides, herbicides, and that kind of thing, if you use IPM, that will take care of it for you. And it'll basically be almost for free, as opposed to having to buy these other things. And we'll get into that here in a little bit as well. Preparing the garden for fall planting and caring for your fall vegetable garden are the main areas that we're going to be looking at. Fall gardening basics, the content is benefits of fall vegetable gardening, differences between spring and fall gardens. This is based on the idea of having a cool fall garden as opposed to having 70, 80 degree temperatures all the way up into the end of October. And then climate considerations for that. So some of the benefits that fall gardening gives to us is that if you truly have this cooler weather showing up, the fewer pests than spring gardening typically would be true, but because we've got the temperatures up there, you may still have to deal with pests. But I do have information in here to tell you how to deal with those pests. But insects are cold-blooded, and they typically go away about when the air temperature gets to be about 44 degrees. After that, then they get into hibernation. So when does 44 degrees become norm for us? Maybe December. So we're going to still have some bugs that we probably are going to have to deal with to some extent. Basically they don't die, but they go underground, or they go underneath. If you happen to have a leaf bed or a layer of leaves, they'll dig under those leaves and they'll hide under there. One of the things I learned that I thought was really interesting is that some of them produce their own antifreeze proteins, and so that helps them to keep from freezing in those cold. Now, which ones that do that, I can't tell you. I didn't learn that, but I just thought it was interesting that there were bugs out there that just self-generated an antifreeze within their bodies to keep them from freezing. Cooler weather boosts flavor. This was something else that I didn't know that sounds rather interesting to me, that some of the vegetables, specifically the vegetables that are considered cool weather vegetables, will adapt to the cooler temperatures, and that tends to improve the flavor of that particular vegetable. And there's 2 or 3, 4 of them that I'll try to remember to mention in this presentation that where that is true. Carrots is one of them. Another thing would be extends the season, which we're going to talk about. I think it's the next to last slide, where how that season can be extended really, truly into December if you did some of what is suggested here. So, this is average outside temperature by month for Tulsa, Oklahoma. So when you look at that, you see that 80 degrees doesn't go away till either late September, first part of October, but we're still well into the 70s. So that's why I'm saying that the temperatures, it's hard to say this is a cool weather garden when our temperatures stay that warm for that long. And it does create some other issues. Planting in mid-August, though, does help in some regards because you don't have to start your seeds indoors any longer because you have well, I've got another chart in here on the soil temperature at 2-inch depth, and you see the soil temperature is up in the 80s. So it's plenty warm so that you would not have to do things in the house to germinate your seeds. One thing, though, I did find today, and I kind of knew it, but have you tried finding vegetable seeds about this time of the year? Has anybody tried that?
Oh, I have. It was actually for a wedding to throw seeds.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't find it anywhere.
Okay, yeah, I went down to Sanders today, and I'm not being paid by Sanders, so, but I went down there, and they had a very small selection of vegetable seeds down there. But I don't remember last time I was in Lowe's, they're gone come late June, and probably Home Depot's the same way. So if you're going to plant a fall garden, get your seeds early. Otherwise, you won't have seeds to get because they just, unless you know of some place that you can get them, like online or in other areas. The other thing that these temperatures, I think, help with is if you like to spread your harvest out over a long period of time, you can plant seeds at different intervals so that you will then be able to spread your harvest out more than just the first time you plant that seed and whatever that plant produces, that's it. Well, if you plant another seed, a group of seeds a couple of weeks later, another couple of weeks later, another couple of weeks later, then you can spread your harvest out and you'll be able to have vegetables lasting a long time for you. Okay, this is another interesting chart that I've found, and that is, we talk about a fall rainy season. This chart doesn't really support that. It kind of says that our rainy season is May and June, which, I'll buy into that. So if you're expecting to use less water in your fall garden, I wouldn't expect that. You're going to have to water all the way through the growing season for the fall garden. Because we won't even get as much rain in the fall as we did in May and June. So that becomes another issue for us that we may not have thought of. And I know once as temperatures cool, you don't have to water quite as much because it doesn't evaporate the water quite as quickly. So hopefully if temperatures go down some, that would help you as far as your watering. And I'm only staying there because my water bill is ridiculous, and I'm sure yours is too. So spring versus fall gardens, like I've said, basically there's very little difference, but one of the things this chart is saying, spring temperatures warm from cool to warm, whereas the fall garden is going to go from hot to cool, depending upon how long your garden lasts. If it lasts into mid-late November, December, then yeah, you'll have a cool garden at that. And I don't mean cool being that, I think we understand. I'm talking temperatures. Okay, the other thing is typically the spring is going to start with cold hardy plants and go to the warm, the plants that require more heat. Whereas in the fall garden, you can start those seeds because your temperatures in your soil are, 70, 80 degrees. And so that will help the germination. And one of the things that it also does is it helps from August and September to help get your plant well established so that when and if the cooler temperatures do arrive, they will then make it through that time with very little difficulty or problem. Another pest risk, and this goes to the IPM that I was talking about, the integrated pest management, and I'll get into that in a whole lot more detail here in a little bit. But spring typically has higher insect activity, whereas fall doesn't. Again, this was put together thinking cool fall. I know I grew up in northwest side of Chicago, and we had cool falls, and we even had Indian summer that came through after a cool spell. Then it got a little warm, then it went back cool. I've not experienced that down here at all, or even nothing even close to it. Whereas in the fall, you could have as much insect problems all the way through that fall garden. In fact, I was pulling up some summer squash plants today at my house, and I could just see the squash bugs just wandering. Didn't have a lot of them. I killed them off earlier, but they've come back. So I would assume they'll be there for a while, or could be there for a while. So looking at the fall vegetables and ones that really are labeled cool weather vegetables, we are going to, it starts at leafy greens, kale, spinach, lettuce. They thrive in the cooler weather. I don't know that you want to start them like in mid-August. You may want to hold off on those until maybe even September. But keep in mind your maturity time frame. And what they throw out as a typical maturity length is 60 days. So if you figure 60 days from a harvest and then back that up, and I'm going to show you something here in just a little bit about how a tool that could be used. But anyway, that 60 days helps you to kind of gauge, okay, if this thing is going to, if I'm going to harvest this on this date, 60 days previous, that's when I need to plant it. So you can back it down from that standpoint. Another one of the root crops is carrots, beets, radishes, and these tend to sweeten as the temperatures go down, which is kind of a nice thing. If you can get it down low enough for it to actually activate that change that happens in those root crops. Optimum growth is typically 45 degrees to 75 degrees. That puts it kind of late in the year when you really have that. The other thing is, I've given you the rainfall, the soil temperatures, and we're going to talk through another temperature chart here in a little bit, but you might have to put all that down and look at it together to try to put together your planting plan to see, okay, I'm working with typically 60 days, but what's the temperatures like, and are the seeds, how long can I delay this to plant these seeds such that they will experience this cool weather sweetening that's supposed to take place in them. Now there are some crops, some vegetables I've learned that you can, I don't know where you get them because I haven't researched it, but you can get some of these cool weather vegetables that are specifically bred to produce longer into cooler temperatures, and they're cold hardy is one way of saying it, summarize it. Another group of vegetables, and I'm brassicas. I don't know if that's pronounced properly or not, but you're looking at cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, those vegetables that I know my kids didn't like. I'm sure your kids may not like them. And my son, even though he didn't like them, they cut out vegetables in their house. I don't know how they ever got away with that, but they did. The other thing, when you buy seeds, I would encourage you to flip it over on the back and see what it says. Does it say anything about fall gardens? Does it say anything about soil temperatures, or does it say anything about freezes? Because the first frost and the first hard freeze in the fall are critical in a lot of cases as to whether or not they'll live beyond that. So I looked at the packets that I bought today from Sanders, and none of them had any of that information on them. They were all pretty much focused as summer gardens, and expecting you not to be using them in fall, so they don't really address the fall. But anyway, just to remind you, you want to get your seeds early so that you have them, so that you can plant them. And this slide talks about that 60-day maturity, days to maturity for top cold-tolerant varieties. This is targeting those that take 60 or less. Now, I have not seen very many, if any, that really take more than that. Some may be 40 days, 50 days, 60 days. I didn't see any in my research anyway, and I'm sure there are some that might hit 70 days for maturity, but you might want to double check to be sure that the particular seeds that you're wanting to plant, that they mature in that 50 to 60 day window. There are, like I said before, there are some varieties that have been bred for cold tolerance and shorter maturity dates or time frames, so that you can look those up and find those if that fits into your plan, if that fits into what you need. Otherwise, I would think the seeds that you get for your spring and summer gardens are going to work just fine. Again, I want to remind you, watering throughout the season will be an issue that we'll need to keep up to be sure that the plants grow the way they're supposed to. Seed selection, choose fresh, high germination, disease-free seeds. Another thing that you've maybe not done, and then again maybe you have, is pre-soak your seeds. Some seeds, and specifically ones with very hard crusts around the actual plant that's inside the seed, some of those require more than just planting them in the ground. Some of them you need to put them in a refrigerator, and they need to have a cold spell for a while, which has pretty much already been done if they're in a packet that you're buying. But some of them may need to be soaked in water for 24 hours or something like that. And typically they'll tell you that to get the best results in planting and germination as a result of that. So those are things you need to take into consideration depending upon the vegetable that you're wanting to plant. You need just looking at those things. So fall garden prep, this is where composting from last month comes into play. And you want to use organic mulch. And what I mean by that is don't use the the shredded tires. They typically, what will happen when you use shredded tires is it will absorb heat even more, and instead of being an insulator, it'll cook your seeds. So do not use your shredded tires or rubber mulch or something like that. Be sure it's an organic based mulch, and put that down to help. And the mulch insulates the ground from the heat as well as the cold. And then we're going to talk about row covers on your garden, and you might put row covers over your plants, which then during the daylight hours, the sun, will heat up that air under the covers, so that extends your garden time further. Even though it's colder outside, the sun keeps it warmer under the covers. That's an expense, that's an effort that you would have to put out if you want to take your garden into December. I mean, if you're happy with it ending in late October or November, you may not want to do that. Okay, what we're looking at, clear crop residue. So basically what we're saying here is to clear your garden of the plants residue that might be there. Maybe this is part of what you want to throw in your compost pile. As I shared last time, I don't typically do that because the stalks of the plants are harder than if you're just using kitchen waste and shredded paper for your compost pile, but your stalks are harder and they take longer to decompose. And so you may or may not want to just throw them in your compost pile. That's purely up to you. I elect not to do that because I want mine to decompose quicker. So that would be one thing, is to clear things out, getting ready for the planting for the fall garden. And then you want to incorporate organic matter. The organic matter compost, some of what it does is it works with the fungus that's in the soil. There is a good fungus in the soil that connects with the roots of your vegetable plants, and it's kind of like it's kind of like putting a hose on your faucet on the back of your house or front of your house. It extends how far out, except this is sucking water out of the ground, getting it, along with the nutrients, getting it to the plant. And so the organic matter works with the fungus that's in the ground. I don't know if you are familiar with no-till or low-till. That's when you till up your ground, dig up your ground, that's where you disrupt the fungus. So you want to keep your disruption of the soil to a minimum, like maybe an inch or two at the most, just to kind of get it ready. Synthetic fertilizers kill this fungus. And so if you are throwing a synthetic fertilizer onto your ground, it's going to feed the plant, but it's going to hurt everything else that's in the ground that is working to feed that plant. Organic fertilizers release slower and stay in the soil longer than do the synthetic fertilizers. The organic matter helps to hold moisture longer in the soil, so that hopefully if you have a good mulch layer up top, it'll hold the moisture in the soil so that you're not having to water on a daily basis, but maybe you can do that every other day or every third day. It also breaks up clay soils. If you have clay in your yard, or you have, when you dig up your soil, you get big clods of things and you're constantly having to break it up. The organic matter from the compost will help to break that down and give you a good, smaller clump kind of soil that will be beneficial to your garden. Also, you have what we call a fact sheet, and its number is HLA 6007. That number's in the upper right-hand corner of the page. But that particular one, you may want to read Improving Garden Soil Fertility. You may want to just read through that, scan it, before you actually start working on your garden. And hopefully that would help you to improve the soil of your garden. The next thing you want to do is check the pH. And one of the things I learned is that pH is like a garden gate. If the pH of the soil is similar to the pH need of the plant, the gate is wide open. And so all the nutrients that are in the soil will get to that plant. But if your pH of your soil is less or more acidic, more basic than what that plant needs, that prohibits the plant from being able to get the nutrients that are in the soil that plant needs. And it may not be as healthy as it could be if you had the proper pH. So, as a result of that, we master gardeners encourage you to get a soil test. And you should have a soil test as one sheet to tell you how to take that soil test. And then you take it to our extension office, which is on the north side of the fairgrounds on 15th Street. And I think it costs you $15 at this point. And it will tell you what your soil needs.
So I've seen where you can buy little electronic doohickeys you stick in the ground that can test your pH. Are those any good?
He wants to know if the devices that you can buy in the stores that will measure the pH or indicate a pH on a scale, are they any good? I don't really know. I would go with the soil test. I'd be willing to bet the soil test will be cheaper than that device. And the soil test would be good probably for 3 years for you. Then we encourage you to get another soil test. But it'll tell you what the pH is. It'll tell you what the different levels of nitrogen and potassium and what's the other one? Phosphorus is in the ground, and it'll tell you how much you need to apply of each one, or if you need to apply it. Now, you may have to do a little bit of mathematical gymnastics to figure that out, but they pretty well tell you what to do with that. And as far as if the pH is not where you want it to be, lime raises the pH, and it'll take the acidic nature and raise it, make it more basic, and sulfur lowers the pH, so that if it's real basic and it needs to be more acidic, then the sulfur will help you do that. The average pH level for Tulsa area is 5.4. The average for the state is 6.06. So that's kind of on the acidic side, or on the lower end. But one of the things that's kind of interesting is this chart here, and I'm not sure if this is in your handout or not, but this chart shows you that the vast majority of the vegetables have a pH need in the 6 to 7 range. You know, so if you are somewhere in that 6 to 7 range as far as your pH is concerned, then you should be okay for most all of the vegetables. Now, blueberries, if you're trying to raise blueberries, 4.5 to 5.5. So you likely may have to add some lime or some sulfur to lower that, to get that down. And I think potatoes was another one. But other than that, most all of the vegetables will be in that 6 to 7 range for pH. Okay. The other thing that I don't know if you know this, I know I didn't, I had to look it up, but nitrogen is for leafy growth. So one of the things that you can tell if you got too much nitrogen, especially with tomatoes or others, is that you'll get a lot of green on the tomato plant or on the plant and next to nothing when it comes to fruit. And you've got way too much nitrogen. The other thing about that, especially for tomatoes require the flower to set to make the tomato. Temperatures have to be in the 70s. If it's higher, it will not set, and you won't get anything other than leafy growth. So like right now, if you have tomato plants and you're wondering why you're not getting any, because the temperatures are not getting below 80 degrees at night. And they have to get down into preferably mid to lower 70s for your best setting of the flowers. And then once the flower sets, then if it gets higher in temperature, then that's okay. But your flowers, you may get a lot of flowers, but they're not going to set. They're not going to fertilize so that you get those tomatoes. And the reason is it's too hot. Now, as temperatures go down, if you still keep that tomato plant alive, hopefully, as temperatures get down, they'll start flowering again and resetting. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you that that's going to happen, but from what I've been told and what I've researched, it sounds like that can happen. So that as long as you don't have, well, there's indeterminate and determinate tomatoes, and the determinate ones, they only bloom once and you're done. The indeterminate just keep blooming and keep producing. So as long as you got indeterminate tomatoes, you should be able to get some more later in the summer, or later in the fall.
How do you know you have an indeterminate? Like, does it say on the package?
It says it, yeah. How do we know if it's determinate or indeterminate? The packet, when you buy your tomatoes, should tell you that. Master gardeners have a spring plant sale, and we list on the order form determinate and indeterminate, as well as the type of tomato. And if any of you have not ordered from Master Gardeners, typically you order beginning in February all the way through the end of March, and then you come and pick it up about the middle of April on a Thursday at the fairgrounds. And that's our biggest, and I don't want to say only fundraiser, but it is what supports all the programs that we put on in this area. Okay. So nitrogen is N, phosphorus is P. This is like when you go and buy a bag of fertilizer. It gives you the three numbers, and it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. NPK are the chemical designations for those chemicals. And you typically are, if you buy the fertilizer, the phosphorus and the potassium do not wash out of the ground all that much. It's the nitrogen that washes out. And so you're better off buying, especially if you're buying for your lawns, you're better off buying something that's got a high nitrogen with a very low potassium and phosphorus rating. Okay, another thing is, well, that's balanced fertilization. Cover cropping is one thing that you can do to help you with your fertilization in your ground, is if you buy some cover crop like clover. Some of the cover crop is clover, beans, peas, alfalfa, vetch, or lentils. Any of those, and what they do is that they produce nitrogen and they put it back in the ground, so that saves you from having to buy the synthetic nitrogen, put it in the ground. These plants, and you can put it in over weathering. And I'm sure you've seen the cows out in the wheat fields eating during the winter time. Well, that's because they can do that because it hasn't started producing anything, but it also adds into the field. Farmers use a lot of fertilizers, especially for corn or for beans, soybeans, because they suck the nitrogen out of the ground, so much out of the ground, they deplete the ground, so they have to use some synthetic fertilizer to replenish it so they have a crop for next year. That's one of the negatives, I guess you'd say, from the way we plant, because I don't know if you're familiar with cornfields, but they plant them about that far apart. They're real close. Every corn stalk is really close to the next one. But the cover crops will help you put nitrogen back in the soil through the winter time. And then it's encouraged that you turn those cover crops into the soil when it comes time to prepare for your spring gardens as well. Because that way you get the decomposition of the plant that's producing the nitrogen into the ground as well. And the last one is warm soil amendments. Work amendments in early so they blend in well. So if you put, I'm sorry?
What is amendment?
Amendment would be like compost. So if you have a compost and you're getting ready for your fall garden, you might want to take some of your compost out of that pile. Typically it's on the bottom, and put that in where your garden is. You don't need a lot, an inch or so, and spread it around and work it in a little bit, and that will fertilize the ground for your spring or fall garden, whichever the case may be. Okay. And we've already looked at this one. Okay, this is another thing that you might want to do as far as helping your plants during the growing season, and that is to put mulch in and around them. You want to put organic mulch, as I said previously, but it helps to insulate the really warm temperatures from the earth, so you're not baking the roots of your plants. And then during winter time, it insulates against the cold and keeps the ground warmer. I have a chart in another presentation where they did temperatures under the mulch to show, and then what the air temperature was, and it does help significantly when you put the mulch in. But you need to put probably an inch or two of mulch down. That also helps with weeds, so we don't have to pick weeds or dig weeds up during that time. And we want to use compostable mulch again, because once you start digging in there to clean up for the next garden, you don't want rubber or non-compostable type mulch to get down in the dirt. So if you get some wooden type mulch in the dirt, that's fine. It's going to decompose anyway. And so it'll add nutrients back into the soil. And then you can put more compost out there if you want. The other thing is the row covers. Now, I don't know if you want to go to this extent, because you would have to buy the plastic, buy the hoops, lay it out so that it's all in there. On really warm days, you're going to need to open those so that you don't burn your plants. It doesn't get too hot in there for them. So it's a whole lot more work to extend your garden, maybe 2 to 4 weeks, maybe even longer, depending upon. I saw one chart where it said 1 layer of the row covers or 2 layers of the row covers, and there's about a 2 to 4 degree difference as far as the temperatures under those row covers if you go with 2 instead of 1. But you do have more work. You do have to open things up, let it, and be sure to get some air in there as well. It's important to have plants planted in proper spacing so that you get airflow through the plants, because if you don't, you can develop fungus on the plants if there's not enough airflow, if you have too much humidity, and different things like that. And then that just attacks the plants and doesn't do good for you. So you need to, when it says space it every 3 or 4 inches on rows that are 2 feet apart, you need to read that seriously on the packet when it tells you that, because they're saying that for airflow around the plant to help give you the best plant and produce that you can get. So we're going to look at fall gardening care. And this is, this is part of that where I put this together and then I came across all these other charts. And so I'm not sure how much this really is accurate for our area. But water less often as temperatures drop. They have to drop pretty significantly for us before that really takes effect. So the biggest thing would be to watch it. Be constantly observing to see, okay, do you have any pest infestations of any kind? Is it too wet? Is it too dry? Just to be sure that you know exactly how much to water. The other thing is water the ground, not the plant. And the reason for that is that you don't, if you water the plant, you get moisture on the plant, and if temperatures are right, if airflow is wrong, that's when the fungus is created on the plant, and it causes you problems. So you're better off watering the ground as best you can, not the plant. No, I'm saying around the plant on the ground, so that the plant does get watered, but not watering from the top of the plant down, letting the water drip down, off the plant. That, as best you can, do it that way. Water the ground. Okay, late season pests. Again, you've got the idea that it's still pretty warm, and you're still going to have pests to have to watch for.
When you say integrated pest management, what do I go buy a bunch of ladybugs?
As a matter of fact.
Oh.
Yeah, that is one of the things. Asking what is integrated. Okay, now I'm going to show you some alternatives to that, because that can get expensive. Amazon, I went and checked it out. They do have ladybugs. You can buy 750 ladybugs for $20. Ladybugs are good for watching over aphids. They eat aphids. They'll consume multiple aphids a day as their diet. Another one is lacewings. Those are expensive, and I could only find those at one place, and they wanted hundreds of dollars for a bunch of lacewings. So I'm going to show you a different way to handle that same problem here in just a minute. But yes, that is one of the things you can do, is you can buy these, they're called predator insects, that will attack and eat the insects you don't want, the bad insects. And when you do, and basically we're just using nature to take care of it rather than trying to come up with some other way of doing things. So we've got the pests, and IPM is what we want to focus on. Let's see. Okay, IPM is an ecological and biological control. And what I mean by that is the ecosystem of that plant, that's around that plant, you're using plants as integrated pest management control for other plants. And I've given you an illustration here, and we'll cover that in just a minute. The biological part would be to integrate other predator insects into your garden to take care of the bad insects that are coming because they like the plant that you planted. You know, like squash bugs for summer squash. You know, somehow we need to attack those squash, put something in that garden to attack the squash bugs so that they don't destroy your plants and your harvest. Okay, once you've got a handout that looks like this. 7 beneficial insects for garden pest control. So if you find that you're having these, well, let me see, the middle column, if you look at the middle column, it says that the insects in the left-hand column prey on the insects on the middle column. Those insects in the middle column are the bad insects. The ones on the left-hand column are the good insects. They're the predators that keep these others in check so that they're not destroying your garden. And how do I get the insects in the left-hand column to come to my garden? Well, the list on the right-hand column tells you, like if you want ladybugs, plant dill or dandelions. Or basket of gold, I've not heard of that one. Fern leaf yellow. Another thing that, I'm going to show here in just a minute is that marigold seems to be a kind of a catch-all for taking care of a lot of the insects you do not want to come into your garden. So when you plant your vegetables, plant marigolds at the same time. Or if you plant them ahead of time, or you've planted them in the springtime for your spring and summer garden and they're still alive, don't destroy them. In fact, baby them so that they help, because they then, and we'll see here in just a little bit, that they do have a significant impact in being able to ward off these bad insects. And so what we're doing there is that ecological kind of IPM, because that plant is generating something in the soil that turns these bad insects away. So marigolds are a good thing. And the list on the right-hand column are other plants that you can plant with your vegetables that will draw the predator insects to manage the negative insects that you happen to have. And that's what IPM is.
So are those wasps, are they the ones that are on the ground? Because I've been trying to drown them.
I don't know. I'd have to look. Have not I know a little bit about ladybugs and the lacewings, but these others I'm not that familiar with. But I know my wife pointed out a pretty good size, what looked like a wasp, that was flying around. It was red or brown in color. Yeah. We only had one, and we had an area in my flower bed that had been disturbed, and so I watered it, and I haven't seen this wasp since. So I don't know if what I did helped to drive him away or her away.
Well, our ground wasps
Yeah.
have problems, will give you problems, but I think I've got these.
Well, the other
My
thing,
flower bed.
okay, the other thing would be Google bracondid wasps and just see what it tells you.
Because I've been trying to drown them.
Well, and it could be that they're not good, but then again, if this is what you have,
That's what it looks like.
Okay, you don't want to drown it. It's doing good. It's doing good things for you. Even though it's a wasp.
Praying mantises are good.
Yeah, praying mantises are good as well. Yes. And they're not on this list, which I was a little surprised.
Several of them.
Yeah, they're supposed to be good. Okay. Any other questions about this? Okay. Okay, we want to look at, you should have one sheet as well on this companion plants, and it's two-sided, and there's two different lists that are there. And if you look at this side, marigold up there for the tomato, marigold for the cucumber. It's on every single one of them. Now, there's colored dots, and I don't know if in the copying the colored dots came through properly. It did, okay. The colored dots relate to the 6 colored boxes at the top. And so that's telling you what the marigold does, how it functions in that garden to help with the integrated pest management for your, whether it's spring, summer, or fall garden. So marigolds are kind of a good thing for pretty much the biggest vegetables that we typically will plant.
And if you get the marigolds, you can save them for next year.
Yes,
Save them right
yes, yeah. Deadhead them and save the seeds, yeah. This companion planting is a little different. It does list marigold for the cucumber, but it lists other things where you can plant the vegetable in the left-hand column with other plants that may or may not be vegetables in the center column, and those plants work together to put up a shield against the bad insects. So if you're wondering how to lay out your garden, to me these two charts are two helpful, important charts that you might want to look at to try to minimize your insect difficulties or problems and still get a harvest out from both of them. I think that they can, I'm hoping anyway, because this is why I'm giving them to you. It also tells you what not, the bad column on the right, it tells you what not to plant as a companion plant with the plant on the left. This is a chart I came across, I want to say a few years ago, and it has fall garden on one side and spring, summer garden on the other. Where can I get that? I heard that. Okay, where can I get that? You can get it. Oh, okay. Yes, yeah. It gives you the website there on the left-hand side so that you can go there and see what they're offering. And the interesting thing about this is that it's a little bit like, and I don't know if you'll understand this or not, but it's a little bit like a slide rule. I think some of the older people will probably understand slide rules. I'm not sure about the younger people. But, a slide rule is a modern day calculator. Well, it's an old The modern day calculator is a replacement for the slide rule. Engineers use slide rules a lot. And what it shows you here, you can see down there through June, July, and August, you got LP. LP basically is your last outdoor planting based on your first frost date, which is the red line. Now, this should be scooted over 1 week. In other words, November 1st should be where it should be. So everything should be scooted over If you're looking at when to plant, like cauliflower, it would say the last planting there is August 2nd. Well, I'm saying scoot that 1 week over to August 9th. Because the red line, when I took the picture, I wasn't looking at where it was setting, and I just took the picture rather than having it set to where our first frost or hard freeze comes into play. But that's basically, you pick out what the vegetable is that you want to use, read across, when does it say I should plant this, and when can I expect, like squash, summer squash, it says plant July 26th, and I should be harvesting in September. That's what the green checks represent. So it gives you a little bit of a tool that you can use along with your rainfall charts and your temperature charts. I hope that this gives you a tool that you can use, that you will have the best fall garden possible as far as your planting and harvesting is concerned. Does this make sense? Okay. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. I pretty well covered that. Then the next thing here is the 2-inch depth average temperature of the soil in this area. At 2 inches in depth, this is a 5-year average. Now, if you go to, which I don't have the website there, greencastonline.com, greencastonline.com /tools/soil temperature, you can get 2-inch depths, 4-inch depths, 5-year running average, 10-year running average, and when you put it in that you want this tool, be sure you say Tulsa County, and it'll give you something similar to what's here. But you can see that your 2-inch depth for June is around 80 degrees, and your 2-inch depth around the middle of October is 80 degrees. So it's not cool at all at the middle to the end of October. It's still pretty warm. Your ground temperatures are at 2 inches deep. So if you, the next thing I'm going to show you here, oops, that's not it. I don't know why, because it's next on my list, but you should have this soil thermometer map. I don't think I put a slide on this, but you should have this. This is another little tool that tells you, now this is based at 4-inch depth, and I didn't notice that until earlier today. So, but what it's telling you is that when the soil at 4 inches reaches these temperatures, that's when you want to plant the plant that's off to the left. So when the soil reaches 60 degrees, it's time to plant your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplants. And those are ones that you have grown from a seed in your home, so that you're transplanting a plant, not planting a seed in that particular case. Now, if you plant seeds at times different than the temperatures are indicated, they're not going to germinate as quickly as they would if they were at or above the indicated temperatures. Does that help a little? So you've got about, 3 or 4 different things to look at all at the same time to figure out what you're doing.
So I have a question about the transition from the summer garden to this quote
Fall.
Fall garden. So what I'm hearing you say, and maybe because I'm very novice at this, is that right now I have tomatoes and peppers and cucumber and cantaloupe. It's like I can just keep going with those
That's
until they die.
until
Is that right?
they,
You're
yeah.
not gonna pull them up and
No.
plant new stuff.
As long as they keep flowering and your flowers keep setting, I keep doing what I need to do to keep them growing. Because
And
it,
just add more to it as.
yeah, and as they die out, then you can plant other vegetables or seeds in there. Or the other thing would be, okay, I'm going to let this thing grow for another 3 or 4 weeks, so I'm going to plant another vegetable right next to it. And then hopefully when you pull the one up or you cut it off, that you still have this other that's going to take off and grow for the rest of the fall season.
Got it. Okay, that's very helpful.
But if you plant another one by them, it should be a companion.
You got to be sure it's a companion. You don't want to plant something that's a bad, off of that bad column.
I understand now why my dill kept dying. I just let it among the enemies.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. You're planting amongst the enemies. Yeah, because they don't work. I mean, I don't know if you've ever really looked into what goes on between plants. It's amazing how God has got, this fungus, and I'm getting off the topic here, this fungus that's in the ground that connects to the roots to help extend how far out the roots can reach for water and nutrients. It also would then potentially connect to another tree, let's say. And those two trees are going to talk to each other. And one tree says, hey, I'm beginning to hurt over here because some bug is attacking me. And he communicates that with another tree. And so this other tree says, thanks for that word of notice. I'll start producing something to try to keep that bug from getting to me. I mean, think about that. God has done some amazing stuff when it comes to horticulture in how I never knew that trees talk to each other, and then I saw a movie on it and I was just amazed. I love to go into schools and be able to talk about that, but I can do it here, but can't do it in public schools. Okay, season extension. Now this is one of the things that I was trying to say a little bit earlier with if you're going to put the hoops and the plastic and that kind of stuff, that's probably a little easier than doing this, except this is a little bit more long-term. If you build kind of boxes in a greenhouse and all that kind of stuff, but that will extend your growing. I mean, it could potentially extend it all the way throughout the year if you have the right enclosures. But you have to be sure that you're monitoring temperatures inside so that you're not burning the plants because it's getting too hot. So you have to open up that, whatever it is, the boxes or the greenhouse. And I know most greenhouses anymore come with the openings on the top, on the roof or on the sides, so that you can open them until you can get the airflow through there to keep those temperatures within a reasonable range. But this would be another way that if you really wanted to get into it and spend the money and put in the effort, this would be another way to extend your garden to the point that you could almost make it year-round. And especially into December for sure. Okay, where have we been? Well, we've looked at seasonal readiness plan for cooler temps, even though may not reach them. You can still plan for them in hopes that maybe we do. Keep and shorter days to keep growth steady. That's the one thing that I would say is the major difference between your spring and your fall gardens is your days are getting longer in the springtime, your days are getting shorter, significantly shorter in the wintertime or fall. And what is it, December 21st, I think, is the shortest day of the year. I don't remember what the hours of sunlight is, but that's another issue because some of these vegetables need so many hours, X number of hours of sunlight. And so you need to be sure that you're getting that sunlight for them. So now I've also learned, especially here, is that if it says 6 hours or more of sunlight, you may not want to take that literally, because the sun is so hot, especially in the afternoon or late afternoon, that if you got 4 to 6 hours of sunlight and then it got shade the rest of the day because of a fence that was up or something like that, I don't think you're going to have that much problem. So I know I've planted most of my stuff along my western side of my lot, and my neighbor has a stockade fence there, so it's all shade for probably 4 to 5 o'clock on. And it gets morning sun and afternoon sun. But that would be another thing to take into consideration, to be sure you're getting enough sunlight, but not too much sunlight.
Sorry, for someone who's very novice, if you were to plant a raised bed, would you say do it on the east or west or south side?
Well, where would you put a raised bed? That's a good question. Mine happens to be on the west side. And I've got a willow tree in my backyard, which I inherited when I moved in. And so it puts out some shade in the morning. So that, but at the morning sun, I'm not worried about. It's the afternoon, I'm going to say 2 o'clock through 4, 5 o'clock sun. If you get sun all the way up to and maybe into a little bit of that time frame, and then you get shade after that, you're probably better off, because that way you're not burning. I've been told, I tried to grow raspberries this year, or last year and this year, and I was told they don't do well here, and I've kind of figured out why. It's too hot. And so if you're going to do, that's another thing about some of these cool weather vegetables, is that you may have to put up a sunscreen. So you may need to buy some of that fabric, sun fabric, and I think the percentage I've seen is somewhere between 30 and 50% shade fabric, and you may need to put that up if you have full sun all day long. Wherever your bed is, that's where this 30-50% fabric could come into play, that you just put it up over it so that when the sun is up, that fabric is shading the plants by that 30 to 50%. And it's cutting down on that direct sun that it gets. But my gardens are mainly, at this point, flower gardens. I'm trying to get back into the vegetable garden stuff, and I'm having to do a lot of experimentation. I know you don't want to build a raised bed in one area and find out that's probably not the best area to put it, have to move it, because they're not easy to move. So I would just monitor where's the sun at throughout the day where you're thinking about putting that. And if it's getting, I would say, getting more than 6 hours of direct sun, you may want to try to move it where there might be shade in the afternoon. Morning sun is fine because it's not so intense. It's just that afternoon sun. Any other questions? Comments? Disagreements? Thank you.